There are moments in life when silence isn't weakness. It's a weapon. Not the kind that wounds, but the kind that reveals. Reveals who listens, who assumes, who walks away when nothing is said, yet everything is known. This isn't a story about shouting in protest. It's about staying still when the whole world expects you to flinch. Before we begin, if stories like this matter to you, if you believe in silent power, in dignity, in justice told through everyday lives, hit subscribe. It helps this story reach someone who may need it more than we know. Now, picture this. A cold city morning, a subway platform hissing with fatigue, and a young black woman hoodie up, notebook in hand, about to take a seat that changes more than her day. It begins, not with a scream, but with a stare. The train station breathed like a tired beast, long exhales of metal against concrete, sighs of worn shoes brushing dust on the platform. Maya stood still at the yellow line, hoodie up, earbuds in, but the music was off. She preferred the real soundtrack of the city, the rattle of steel, the faint rhythm of clinking coins, the coughs, the coffee slurps, the life. It was 7:43 a.m., and her train, the Green South Line, screeched into the station. Late as always, but right on rhythm. She stepped in like clockwork, third door, second car, left row, window seat if open. Today, it was... She sat down slowly, not slouched like some students did, but with her back straight and her knees pulled just close enough to protect space. Her black backpack, worn at the edges, stitched with a small M in gold thread, rested on her lap like an heirloom. The car smelled of yesterday's sweat and this morning's ambition. Nurses in scrubs, a boy in paint-splattered jeans, a man in a three-piece suit with cracked glasses, all part of this silent theater, each playing their role. Maya pulled out her notebook, not her class one, her private one, the one with pages that had absorbed tears, ink, and strategy. On the first line of today's page, she wrote, "Power isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just the act of staying." A woman coughed across from her, an older woman, white, neatly dressed, with a pale scarf that matched the frost in her hair. She scanned the row, eyes pausing a beat too long on Maya, noticed the hoodie, the skin, the calm. Then, the woman looked up at the sign above. "Please offer this seat to the elderly or disabled," and looked back down at Maya, long enough for it to say what words didn't. Maya met her gaze not with a challenge, but with a kind of stillness, a stillness that made people uncomfortable. A black girl sitting with no guilt, no explanation, no need to move. The train lurched forward. The silence in the car shifted with it, not broken, but strained. She leaned her head lightly against the glass, watched the blur of buildings fly past, her reflection superimposed over the city brown skin, determined eyes, a slight furrow in her brow that said she wasn't raised to flinch. Another day, another ride, another seat that didn't need to be earned but always had to be defended. And she would defend it, not with noise, but with silent power. The train rocked gently, humming its tired lullaby. Passengers shifted in their seats, heads nodding in and out of early morning days. But Maya didn't sleep on trains. She had learned young that sleep was a privilege not offered to girls who looked like her, not in public, not in motion, not where eyes watched and stories formed. Across the aisle, the older woman was still staring. Not openly, not boldly, but with the kind of glance that danced on the edge of accusation, like she wanted Maya to feel it, not hear it. The kind of look passed down, generation to generation, from lunch counters to lobbies to library steps. The woman adjusted her scarf. A pearl earring glinted beneath her silver hair. She looked like someone who donated to the arts and said things like, "I have black friends too," right before locking her car door near Southside. Then came the sound. A deliberate clearing of the throat, not because of phlegm, but performance. Maya didn't respond. The woman leaned forward, not quite across the aisle, but enough to pierce personal space. Her voice was quiet, tight, and trimmed with condescension. "That seat. It's actually meant for elderly or special needs. You know? There's signage." Maya slowly looked up. Calmly. Her gaze didn't sharpen. It didn't shrink. Either. She said nothing. The woman continued, emboldened by the silence. "You look healthy enough, and young. You could stand. It's a matter of basic respect." She smiled, not kindly, but the kind of smile meant to put someone in their place. A trained, racist smirk. A few passengers nearby looked up, glanced away. No one said anything. But the air had shifted. It always did when power was being tested. When entitlement met resistance. Maya blinked slowly. Her pen tapped once against her notebook click like a metronome marking a moment. Then she returned her gaze to the page and wrote, in careful script, "They hate when you don't flinch." The woman leaned back, clearly displeased. She crossed her arms with the rustle of expensive fabric. Then she did something Maya didn't expect. She lifted her purse, a large tan leather bag, and with an overtly casual motion, she dropped it onto Maya's lap. A thud, not heavy, but loud enough to draw attention. The woman spoke again, this time louder. "Since you won't move, hold this. I need to sit." The train kept moving, but the whole car had stopped breathing. The bag sat on Maya's lap like an insult. Smooth leather, overpriced brand. The faint scent of lavender perfume and entitlement. It didn't belong there, not physically, not symbolically. Maya didn't move. Her fingers didn't even twitch. She simply stared at the woman, not with rage, not even with disdain, but with the kind of quiet detachment that made people squirm, as if Maya was studying her, cataloging her, and in a way, she was. The woman blinked. Passengers around them sensed it. This was no longer just a seat issue. It had become a test. A moment. A scene unfolding on a tightrope. No one dared speak, but necks craned subtly, eyes shifted under brows, phones adjusted in hands. "Excuse me," the woman snapped, her tone now sharper, louder. "Are you deaf?" I said. "Move. I need to sit." Maya looked down at the purse, then back at the woman. Then she slowly tilted her notebook toward her, revealing what she had just written. "There's no sign that says this seat is yours." The woman's cheeks flushed pink. She glanced at the sign again, a generic courtesy request, not a legal requirement. She huffed, but Maya didn't stop there. She lifted the purse carefully, deliberately, and placed it on the empty seat beside her, the one the woman had walked past just to get to hers. No words, no drama, just a precise, silent correction. Gasps rippled through the car, barely audible, but real. Someone chuckled under their breath. A young man in a hoodie 2 rows down smirked. The woman looked around, realizing she had become the scene. And Maya. She hadn't even raised her voice. That stung more. "Unbelievable," the woman muttered. "This generation, always so rude, so aggressive." She dropped into the adjacent seat, tugging her bag back as if it had been contaminated. Maya returned to her notebook. "Aggression looks like silence when you expect obedience." The train hissed as it slowed into the next station. Doors opened. People came in. One of them, a teenager in a school uniform, caught the tension in the air and paused before sitting. She looked at Maya, then at the woman. She chose to stand. The train jolted forward again. Maya sat still. Her body relaxed, but her presence unmistakably sharp. She wasn't just riding the train, she was rewriting the rules of who got to ride with dignity. And though not a single person had said racist out loud, the word hung over the car like a storm cloud. Unspoken, but felt. The train had moved 2 stations ahead. Maya still hadn't said a full sentence. The woman beside her shifted constantly, crossing and uncrossing her legs, straightening her scarf, checking her watch every 30 seconds as if offended by time itself. But she hadn't said another word. Not yet. Then came the voice behind them. "Excuse me, Ma'am? It was sweet. Too sweet. Coated in syrup and subtle judgment. Maya didn't look back, but she knew the tone. A girl early 20s maybe, white, hair tied up in a slick bun. She leaned slightly forward in her seat across the aisle, holding a phone close to her chest. The screen was lit, camera app open. Sorry, I saw what happened. Would you like me to film her, in case you need proof later? The woman gasped like an actress, startled by an applause she didn't expect, but deeply desired. Yes. Thank you, dear, she said, loud enough for the whole car to hear. It's just sad. You can't even ask for common courtesy anymore without being attacked. Attacked? Maya's eyebrow twitched, barely. The girl hit record. Her phone angled low, upward just enough to capture Maya's hoodie, her unmoving body, and the woman's performative exhale. It's all entitlement these days, the woman continued. They think they can just take whatever they want. And when you speak up, you're the villain. Maya looked forward, out the window. Buildings blurred past mirrors of a city that saw without seeing. Her pen tapped once, twice. Then she wrote, "The story doesn't start when the camera rolls. It starts when the camera chooses where to point." Across the aisle, the girl whispered to her phone as she zoomed in. Black student refuses to give seat to elderly woman. And just like that, the lie began to breathe. A few passengers looked uncomfortable. One man in a delivery uniform scratched his neck, glanced at Maya, then looked away. Another older black woman, 3 seats down, shifted as if to say something, then didn't. The woman sighed again, louder this time. She adjusted her bag in her lap like a trophy. The camera kept rolling. I tried to reason with her. I really did. But she just glared at me. Not a word. Just that face. That face? Maya wrote one more line in her notebook. They're not afraid of what I said. They're afraid I didn't need to. At 8:16 a.m., the girl in the bun hit post. The caption read, "Black student refuses to give seat to elderly woman. When will this entitlement stop?" No context, no truth. But the internet didn't ask for either. By the time the train passed 9th Street Station, the video had 3,200 views. 2 stops later, $18,000. It was now on 3 platforms, stitched with dramatic music, a flashing caption, and a title that read, "Rude Gen Z girl bullies elderly woman on train." People watching from their beds, their offices, their cars. They saw a hoodie, a still face, and a voiceover calling it hostile silence. Nobody asked what came before the camera turned on. They rarely do. Maya's phone buzzed. She didn't check it at first. She was used to alert school emails, app updates, reminders to breathe. But the rhythm changed. Buzz. Pause. Buzz. Buzz. Longer pause. Buzz. She slid the phone from her coat pocket. The screen lit up. Text from Aaliyah girl. "Is that you on TikTok right now?" DM from Alamarcy. Says say something cause they dragging you. Group chat, 1L Law Warriors. "Hey Maya, are you okay? Just saw the vid. You need to speak out. You want me to report it LMK." Maya didn't respond. She simply swiped up, turned her screen off, and slid the phone back into her pocket. The girl across the aisle kept filming, now with her voice in the video. She just sits there, doesn't care. It's the lack of empathy for me. The older woman sniffled theatrically and said, "I feel sorry for her parents, if she even has any." The words stung, but Maya didn't flinch. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second pen, one with blue ink this time. She flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "Let them craft the headline. I am still the author." A man in a baseball cap a few rows away cleared his throat, leaned to his friend, and whispered too loud. She's just sitting there like she's proud of it. Proud. The train lights flickered. The air thinned. Not a single person asked Maya what had happened. They didn't need truth. They had already made her a villain in their story. And villains don't get to speak. They get filmed, shared, judged. But Maya, she was writing her own version word by word. The train rattled toward University Central Station. One stop left before Maya would get off and walk into her constitutional law class, the irony not lost on her. The girl with the bun had lowered her phone just a bit. Maybe bored, maybe disappointed that Maya hadn't shouted, cried, or lashed out. Rage was good for views. But this silence, it confused people. It made them uncomfortable. The older woman took a deep breath and launched her final act. "This is what we deal with now," she said to no one in particular, but loud enough for everyone. "You give them rights, and they take over everything, even decency." Her voice cracked just right, years of performance practiced in polite society. Then, the words came. "If she doesn't move, I'll report her. I know my rights." That's when Maya lifted her head, just slightly. Not enough to challenge, just enough to be heard. "Do you?" The entire car froze. Maya's voice was low, clear, controlled, like water sliding over marble. She didn't turn her body. She didn't stand. She just spoke to the space in front of her, to the system around her. Because, if you did, you'd know this seat has no legal designation. The courtesy sign is a suggestion, not a statute. Title II of the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination in public accommodations, including transit, and placing personal property on another person without consent is considered battery under tort law. Silence. Even the train seemed to hush itself for a moment, as if the steel beneath them had paused to listen. The girl with the phone blinked, her hand lowered just a little more. The older woman's lips parted, but no sound came out. Maya reached for her notebook and calmly tore out a single page, the one she had just written. She folded it twice and placed it gently on the edge of the woman's seat. Then she stood. Not quickly, not with drama. Just deliberately. She adjusted her hoodie, slung her bag over her shoulder, and said, "I won't be moved, but I'm getting off here anyway." As she stepped toward the door, a man in a hoodie gave her a quiet nod. A woman with braids whispered, "That's how you do it." The doors hissed open. Maya stepped onto the platform. The moment didn't follow her. It stayed behind, simmering, unfinished, alive. And in the seat she left behind, the paper remained, folded, unread. But its weight was undeniable. Maya's boots hit the platform like punctuation. Each step clean, full stop, no wobble, no stumble. She exhaled deeply, not relief, not fear, but a kind of recalibration. Her feet knew the path from the station to campus, 17 minutes on foot. Past the hot dog vendor who opened too early, the cracked mural of black faces painted on the underpass, and the church with the chipped bell. She walked through it all like she had every weekday since September. But today, the air pressed in different, tighter, like the city itself was holding its breath. At the third stoplight, her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it until the fourth buzz came with her professor's name, Professor Blake. Urgent. Curious now, she unlocked the screen. "Maya, please come to my office before class. There's something you should see." Beneath the message, her notifications stacked like falling dominoes. Instagram DMs, TikTok mentions, Twitter threads, emails from unknown addresses, a YouTube clip titled "The Train Girl Who Wouldn't Move," and below it her face, frozen mid-blink, with the words, "Smug student or social justice warrior." Maya stood still on the sidewalk. She tapped open the first video. It wasn't the full story. It never was. A shaky camera, a voice narrating. "Here's a girl who thinks she's above common decency. Just look at that attitude." Clip ends before she speaks. Clip ends before the bag drop. Clip ends before the law. Then another video, stitched with commentary from a lifestyle influencer. She didn't yell, but sometimes silence is more violent. It's passive-aggressive, manipulative, and honestly, scary. Scary. The word hit like a slap, not because it hurt, but because it was familiar. Black women weren't allowed silence without suspicion. If you spoke, you were angry. If you didn't, you were arrogant. If you cried, you were dramatic. If you didn't flinch, you were cold. She opened her group chat. Aaliyah had sent a voice note. Maya, you're trending for real. It's all over now. But not in a good way. They're twisting it. You need to say something. Now. Maya stared ahead past the red light, past the mural, past the whole city. She wasn't afraid, but she wasn't ready. She typed back one word. Wait. Then closed her phone. She would go to Professor Blake's office, but not to explain. She had no intention of defending herself against someone else's headline. She intended to write her own. The hallway leading to Professor Blake's office smelled of fresh paint and old paper. A quiet corridor, tucked away on the third floor of the law building, where sunlight barely touched the floor tiles and whispers clung to the walls like secrets. Maya walked steadily, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie still up, face unreadable. Professor Blake, mid-40s, white, usually unbothered and soft-spoken, stood waiting at the door. His tie was crooked, his smile nervous. Maya, come in, please. She stepped inside. Stacks of books lined the shelves. Constitutional theory, race and the law, landmark civil cases, irony, everywhere. On his desk was an open laptop paused on a paused video. Her face, again, this time. Someone had edited the clip with black and white filters, ominous music, and a title flashing across the screen. Cold eyes, closed heart. Blake cleared his throat. This situation is escalating quickly. I've received 3 calls this morning. One from the dean, one from student affairs, and one from a local news station. Maya stayed quiet. They want a comment, a statement, something. They say if we don't offer one, it looks like we're endorsing the behavior. Which behavior? She asked calmly. Blake hesitated. That's the complication. The behavior being discussed isn't illegal. You didn't violate any code, but you're being framed as uncooperative, dismissive, uncivil. He rubbed his temple. They're calling it a racially charged disruption on public transport. Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. She walked over to his desk and gently clicked the spacebar on the laptop. The video resumed. She watched herself. Silent. Still. A young black woman doing nothing. But in this edit, that stillness had been twisted into menace. The music said she was dangerous. The caption said she was smug. The angle said she didn't belong. I won't defend something I didn't do, Maya said quietly. Blake nodded. I know, but public perception doesn't wait for facts. He pulled out a printed draft, a proposed statement from the university's communications team. If you sign this, we can calm things down. It says you regret the misunderstanding, and that you value respectful dialogue in shared spaces. Maya took the paper. She read it, and for a moment, the air in the room thickened with unspoken pressure. Then she said, "This statement apologizes for my presence, not my actions." Blake sighed. "I'm trying to help you." "I know," she replied, "but you're also trying to keep things quiet." She placed the paper back on his desk untouched. Some things shouldn't be quiet. She turned to leave. At the door, she paused and added, "Tell the dean if they want a statement. I'll write my own, and I'll read it, at the next open forum." Then she walked out, head held high. And in that moment, even Professor Blake understood this wasn't a PR crisis. This was a reckoning. The screen door creaked before Maya even touched it. Her mother always left it unlocked, said she liked the air to come through, even if the world didn't. It was an old South Side habit, from a time when neighbors were watchful and danger came with a knock, not a notification. Maya stepped inside. The scent of ginger tea and laundry detergent clung to the air, along with a gospel song playing low from the kitchen. She followed it like a thread. Her mother stood at the stove, back turned, stirring something thick in a pot. Cornmeal porridge, maybe. Comfort food. But the way her shoulders were pulled up tight, Silent said the comfort wasn't for her. "I saw it," she said. before Maya could speak. No, hello. No, how was your day? Just, I saw it. Maya stayed still by the doorway. Her mother turned, slowly, wooden spoon in hand, and looked her daughter in the eye. She didn't yell, didn't scold. She just asked, "Why didn't you get up?" Maya's lips parted, then closed again. "You knew they'd twist it," her mother continued. "They always do. You could have stood up and avoided all of this. No clips, no news, no trouble." Maya breathed in, not shaky, but heavy. "I didn't do anything wrong. But now they say you did." The room hummed with the weight of generations. Walls held memories, her mother in a nurse's uniform, her father's law books stacked by the TV, Maya's childhood drawings still taped to the fridge. "I sat," Maya said quietly. "That's all." Her mother's eyes flickered. "You think that makes you powerful?" Maya didn't answer. She walked over to the table, pulled out a chair, and sat the same posture as on the train, back straight, hands on lap. "You taught me not to shrink," she said, "but every time I stand still, they say I'm too much." Her mother's voice cracked. "I just want you safe." Safe from what Maya asked. Them, or the version of me they invented. The spoon clinked against the side of the pot. The music from the kitchen radio faded into static. "You know," her mother said finally, "your father, he used to say power's not what you hold. It's what they can't take from you." Maya looked at her, soft, unflinching. "Then I guess I held on." They stood in silence. Two women, same blood, same skin, but standing on opposite shores of a river called survival. And in that silence, there wasn't anger. There was grief, and love, and the unspoken truth. Sometimes, the fight isn't about who's right, it's about who refuses to disappear. The auditorium was full, not packed, not crowded full. Full of eyes, full of questions, full of expectations sharpened into assumptions. 3 rows of faculty sat stiff in their chairs, arms crossed. The dean in navy wool and tension tapped her pen against a notepad without writing a word. Student affairs whispered among themselves. Local reporters lined the back, phones poised like weapons. And in the middle of it all stood Maya, small frame, large presence, no lawyer, no press agent, no slides. Just her. She stood at the center of the stage, the same place the student union usually hosted trivia nights and talent shows. But today, the lights above weren't warm. They were white, clinical, exposing. A moderator cleared his throat. "Maya Coleman has requested to read a personal statement regarding recent events. Please remain respectful during her time." Silence fell, a silence taut and brittle, ready to crack. Maya stepped up to the mic, no shaking, no dramatic pause. Just stillness. "Some of you know me," she began, voice calm, like a page turning. "Most of you don't, and for the past 48 hours, none of you have stopped watching me." Her voice didn't rise, but the room leaned in. "You watched me not stand. You watched me not speak. You watched me sit with my back straight and my mouth closed. And somehow, that was loud enough to scare you." A murmur rippled. Maya let it pass. "I didn't take a seat. I took space. The space I was allowed. The space I didn't apologize for. And because I didn't flinch, you assumed I was dangerous. Because I'm a black girl in a hoodie, who didn't perform guilt for your comfort." Now the room was silent, truly silent. When you film someone and write their story before they speak, that's not journalism. It's control. And when you edit out the part where you're wrong, that's not a misunderstanding. It's a weapon. The dean shifted in her chair. A reporter lowered his phone. "You asked for a statement. Here it is. I don't regret what I didn't say. I don't regret the seat I didn't give up. And I won't apologize for a silence that told the truth louder than your voices ever could." She stepped back from the mic. No applause. Not yet. Just a room full of people suddenly aware of how loud their own silence had been. The first person to clap wasn't a student. It was a janitor. An older black man, leaning against his mop like it was a cane carved from patience. He clapped once, then again, slow, steady, then a few others joined, reluctant at first, then louder, then all at once. But Maya didn't stay for the applause. She walked straight out the side exit of the auditorium, heart steady but breath shallow. The lights from the press still flickered behind her like paparazzi flashbacks. Every step she took now felt like it might be quoted later out of context, out of meaning, but never out of reach. Her phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a tag or a threat. It was a number she didn't recognize. No name, just a message. Well spoken. You held the line. I'm the man who nodded at you on the train. Thought you should know I'm not just a passenger. Maya stopped in her tracks, scanned the message again, then read the second one that followed. We need to talk. My name is Julian M. Carter. I'm a civil rights attorney. Retired. Used to work with your father. Her fingers froze above the screen. Dad. She hadn't heard that name come from anyone outside her family in over 2 years, not since the funeral. Not since the newspapers folded his legacy into a headline about his death. You reminded me of him. The third message read, same eyes, same stillness, same refusal to shrink. Maya blinked. The city moved around her, students rushing to class, faculty pretending not to read her face like breaking news, camera crews packing up their thirst. But inside her, something shifted. Not fear, not even vindication. Recognition. She typed back, Where? The reply came almost instantly. 5th and Holbrook, cafe with red awning. I'll be by the window. Come alone. She stared at the address. It wasn't far. 3 blocks from campus. She passed it often but never went in, always figured it was one of those places where the waiter sizes you up before bringing a menu. Maya looked around. The campus clock read 11:02 a.m. Next class in 20 minutes. She turned left. Not toward the lecture hall, toward Holbrook. Because some conversations don't wait for scheduling. Some names don't come twice. And some quiet nods mean more than 1,000 loud interviews. The cafe at 5th and Holbrook looked like a postcard from another decade, red awning faded by sun, tin letters spelling Lena's above the door, and a bell that jingled like memory when she stepped inside. Maya scanned the room. There, by the window. Julian M. Carter sat with a black coffee, untouched. He wore a wool coat, slightly frayed at the cuffs, and a newsboy cap that gave him the quiet dignity of someone who didn't need to introduce himself. He looked up, nodded once, the same nod, same eyes from the train. She approached cautiously. He stood, offered his hand. Maya Coleman, you look like him. Not just the face, the spine. She shook his hand. Firm, warm, calloused from history. You knew my father. Julian gestured for her to sit. No rush, like the world could wait for this conversation. We marched, filed briefs, lost some, won a few. But mostly, we made noise they couldn't ignore. Maya raised an eyebrow. He never talked much about his early work. Julian smiled, the kind that came from knowing things that hurt too much to say. That's because it broke him. He pulled a thin file from his satchel, yellowed, soft at the edges. This was a case your father worked on in 2003. Young black nurse, accused of assaulting a passenger on a train. Maya's chest tightened. Her hand twitched near the edge of the table. My mother. Julian nodded. She didn't raise her voice, didn't even raise a hand. But the woman she sat next to claimed she felt threatened. Sound familiar? He slid the file toward her. Inside, grainy photos, typed depositions, a train schedule highlighted in orange. Your father fought it for months, but the case never saw trial. University pressure, settlements, silence agreements. He stopped talking about that case, Maya said quietly, because it wasn't just a loss. It was a lesson. That sometimes, even truth needs permission to speak. And he hated that. The cafe buzzed behind them, but Maya felt like she was sitting in a courtroom, the kind where no judge wears a robe. and the only evidence is inherited memory. Julian leaned in. You're standing in the space he never could. Not because you're braver, but because you're not alone anymore. Maya looked out the window. Same trains running, same lines drawn. But now someone had given her a map. Why tell me this now? Julian sipped his cold coffee, eyes steady. Because the seat you took on that train was the one your mother lost. And the world needs to see what it looks like when someone keeps it. The campus looked the same. Same bricks, same banners, same overly polite smiles from classmates who used to greet her by name, now nodding vaguely. Like she was a local celebrity they weren't sure how to approach. But Maya didn't walk like she used to. She wasn't weaving through crowd anymore. She was walking through it. Straight, steady, watching everything. In her hand was the file Julian had given her, tucked in a manila folder like a legal ghost. Inside depositions, transcripts, one shaky photograph of her mother seated on a train, eyes forward, unaware that her dignity was being documented into evidence. Maya had read every word last night. Twice. And now every corner of campus whispered differently. In her law class, when Professor Blake discussed freedom of speech, 3 students stole glances her way, like freedom had become a story too close to home. In the dining hall, someone had written on the student forum whiteboard, "Silence is power, unless it's insubordination." Below it, someone else scribbled, "She made all black students look bad." No one erased it. Not even the staff. That afternoon, Maya sat alone beneath the old magnolia tree near the library, the one her father used to read under as a student. She could picture him there, headphones in, book cracked open, feet crossed at the ankles like he had nowhere urgent to be. But she was urgent now. She took out her notebook and began writing not thoughts, not feelings, but questions. How many black women have lost reputations trying to stay still? How many institutions demand our grace but never offer it back? How many headlines are built on the bodies of our restraint? A breeze blew petals off the magnolia. They fell onto her notebook like footnotes. That's when her phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't hate. It wasn't praise either. It was a message from Student Conduct Review Board. Subject line: Notice of formal inquiry, campus representation and public behavior. Maya stared at it. Public behavior. The irony clawed at her. She hadn't shouted, hadn't stood, hadn't cursed. She'd sat, and now they were calling her presence behavior. The email continued. We invite you to provide a written reflection in response to community concerns. This is not a disciplinary measure, but an opportunity to engage in restorative dialogue. Restorative. The word made her laugh, soft and bitter. They wanted her to restore what she never broke. She looked up, sunlight dappling through magnolia leaves, and whispered, They're not trying to repair harm. They're trying to reset the narrative. And this time, she didn't intend to let them. Maya didn't decline the invitation. She RSVP'd with a single line. Thank you. I'd like to engage, but on my terms. The committee, made up of 5 faculty members and 2 neutral student observers, replied with careful interest. They were expecting contrition, reflection, a civilized exchange where Maya would sit, fold her hands, and discuss the impact of tone and posture in public spaces. But Maya didn't show up with apology. She showed up with receipts. The room was small, one of the side conference rooms in the administrative building. Beige walls, circle of chairs, a pitcher of water on the table like they were about to rehearse a scene from The Breakfast Club. Maya entered wearing a black blouse and gray slacks. No hoodie, no notebook. Just the file from Julian Carter and her presence. The dean of students opened. Maya, we're grateful you're here. This is a space for honest sharing. Nothing punitive. Just dialogue. Maya smiled softly, but the silence that followed was not passive. It was loaded. She reached into her folder and pulled out the first page, a copy of the official complaint from 2003. This was filed against my mother, on the Green South Line, by a woman who said she felt threatened when a black nurse didn't give up her seat. The room stilled. The woman claimed my mother's silence was hostile, that her refusal to apologize made her feel unsafe. She laid the paper flat on the table, then pulled out a second page, the university's public statement back then. The administration supported the passenger, said they regretted the incident, and vowed to educate their students on civility in public spaces. A faculty member shifted uncomfortably. Maya continued, voice calm but precise. 20 years later, the same train line, the same accusation, different black woman, same result. She paused, letting it sink in. You've asked me to reflect on the impact of my behavior, but you haven't reflected on the history that shaped your reaction to it. You're not restoring dialogue. You're recycling silence. The dean opened her mouth to respond, but Maya held up a hand, not rudely, but like a teacher pausing a student. I came here to participate, not to be evaluated, so here's my contribution. She handed out a one-page statement, a redefinition of restorative dialogue, complete with citations, case examples, and questions for institutional introspection. On the last line, bolded in black ink, it read, "Restoration begins when institutions stop asking the silence to speak first." The room went quiet. Not because they agreed, but because, for once, they didn't know how to continue. When Maya stepped out of the building, the sun had tilted west. The air was warmer. But something else had shifted. To something harder to name. It started with a girl sitting on the campus steps, brown skin, afro puff. Political science textbook in her lap. She didn't say anything as Maya passed, just raised a fist briefly and dropped it back down. No words, no banner, just a signal. Maya kept walking. At the quad, a small group had gathered near the big oak tree, not protesting, just sitting. In silence. Some wore hoodies. Some held blank notebooks in their laps. One had a handwritten sign that said, "Sometimes not moving is the loudest thing you can do." Maya stopped, looked at them. They didn't clap, didn't cheer. They simply nodded, and in those nods, she felt something electric, agreement without performance. Her phone buzzed again, a new group chat she'd been added to. The seated ones, she opened it. Messages rolled in fast. "We're planning a sit-in. No chants, no mics, just presence. Want you to know this isn't just about the train anymore. You reminded us it's okay not to shrink." And then, one message from an unknown number. "My sister goes to that school. Said you changed something. Thank you." Maya's breath caught. She'd spent days under scrutiny, edited into a villain, wrapped in assumptions she didn't author. But now she was becoming something else. Not a hero, not an icon, but a mirror, and people were beginning to see themselves in her reflection. At the dining hall entrance, 2 cafeteria workers nodded as she walked in. One of them slipped her an extra apple with her lunch tray. No words exchanged. At her table, a Muslim girl from her comparative law class slid her a folded note. "They did this to my mother, too. Same silence, same seat." Maya didn't unfold it all the way. She didn't have to. That evening, as she walked home, she passed a lamppost with a flyer taped to it. It read, "Silent sit, tomorrow, 12 p.m., South Lawn. If they silence us in movement, we'll speak by staying." At the bottom, in bold, "The seat is ours." And Maya smiled. Not wide, not for the cameras. Just a small, knowing curve, the kind that doesn't beg to be seen. The kind that stays. The kind that begins revolutions without needing permission. No chants, no speeches, no hashtags screamed. At exactly 1200 p.m. The South Lawn was full of people sitting scattered like quiet punctuation marks across the grass. Some brought books. Others wore hoodies. Some came barefoot. All came not to shout, but to show. Maya arrived last. She didn't go to the center. She chose a spot under the sycamore, where shade met sun, and sat. No sign, no title, just presence. Around her, the quiet hummed with meaning. Students who never spoke in class now spoke by sitting. A boy with stutter. A girl who used a cane. 2 black twins from the engineering department. dressed alike but looking in opposite directions. Even the jazz professor, who never turned on his mic in Zoom class, sat cross-legged, saxophone case beside him. Then Maya saw her, across the lawn, standing. The woman from the train. She wasn't dressed like before. No pearls, no scarf, just a beige windbreaker, hair down, and beside her a teenage girl. 17, maybe, pale, freckled, uncomfortable. The girl looked toward Maya, then whispered something. The woman hesitated and walked. Each step toward Maya felt like it took years off her posture. By the time she reached the edge of the tree's shade, she looked less like a villain, more like someone remembering how to be real. She didn't sit, but she didn't walk away either. "You don't know me," the woman began, voice taut. "But my daughter does. She showed me the whole video." Maya said nothing. The silence between them wasn't bitter. It was clean. Waiting. I was wrong," the woman continued. "I thought I was teaching her manners, but I was teaching her fear." She swallowed. "You didn't say anything on that train, and still, I heard everything." A long pause. "My daughter asked me if I'd ever apologized to a black woman before." Maya raised an eyebrow. The question wasn't hers to answer. "This is my first time," the woman said, eyes glassy. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just didn't want to disappear again." Maya studied her. There was something fragile in the way she stood, like a house no longer trying to look expensive, just hoping not to collapse. "It's not forgiveness you need," Maya said softly. "It's practice." The woman blinked. "Practice. At seeing us fully, not as stories, not as threats, as people." A beat. "Like your daughter is watching, always." The woman nodded slowly. Tears didn't fall, but something softer did. She turned to leave, but her daughter stayed behind a second longer. She looked at Maya and whispered, "I want to be like you." Maya shook her head, just once. "Be louder, be sooner." The girl smiled and left. And just like that, Maya returned to silence. But this time, the silence didn't feel like resistance. It felt like growth. The studio was colder than Maya expected. Not the air, the atmosphere. Polished floors, tall ceilings, lights that didn't blink, and producers who smiled too fast. She sat in the green room while a makeup artist dabbed at her cheekbones and asked casually, "So, do you want to come across more approachable or more assertive on camera?" Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to perform clarity. She just needed to speak it. The segment was called Voices of the Moment, hosted by an anchor known for being neutral. She had a neutral haircut, a neutral smile, a voice tuned for sound bites, not silence. Today we're joined by Maya Coleman. The anchor began, her tone crisp. The student whose subway moment has stirred nationwide conversations around race, silence, and respect. Maya blinked slowly. Subway moment, as if truth could be time-stamped. "Maya," the anchor continued, "you've become a symbol for many. Some call you brave. Others say you were defiant. What do you call what you did?" Maya looked directly into the camera, not at the anchor, at the country. "I call it being..." The anchor paused, caught off guard. "Just being..." "Yes, existing without apology." And that seemed to scare people. The anchor smiled tightly, flipping her cue card. "Some viewers felt your silence was confrontational. Do you regret not explaining yourself sooner?" Maya leaned in, not with aggression, with intention. "Do you ask that to everyone who doesn't speak, or just the ones who don't look like you?" The anchor blinked. Off camera. A producer gestured nervously, but Maya kept going. "I wasn't silent because I had nothing to say. I was silent because I was tired of having to explain my right to sit." She exhaled, slowly. "You want a quote? A lesson? A neat narrative? But life's not tidy. People aren't episodes. And justice doesn't come with background music." The room was still. For the first time, the anchor didn't speak. Maya looked back at the camera. If me sitting down felt like a revolution, ask yourself why. If a black girl not flinching made you uncomfortable, maybe it wasn't her stillness that needed to move, but your idea of her. The camera light turned red. Segment over. No applause, no music, just the hollow click of production. As Maya left the chair, the floor manager whispered. That wasn't what they were expecting. Maya looked him in the eye. Good. She walked past the studio doors, past the polished floors, out into the city where noise lived and truth often died. But today, for once, truth had spoken. The envelope was cream-colored, smudged with time. No return address. The handwriting on the front curled with age letters written like they'd once been taught with ruler and patience. Maya found it in her campus mailbox the day after the broadcast. She opened it sitting under the magnolia tree, the same spot where she had written her first questions. The paper inside smelled faintly of cedar and paper ink. No perfume, just truth. The letter read, Dear Maya, I don't know you, baby, but I saw you. Not on that train, not in that chair, but in the silence. You sat the way we were taught not to. You looked still in a world that trains us to move out of the way, and you reminded me of a girl I once was. My name is Mrs. Essie Laverne Jackson. I am 82. I live in a small town with one bus line, no subway, and too many ghosts. In 1957, I sat on a bench at the front of a Greyhound station in Georgia. There was no sign that said I couldn't, but there was a man with a badge who said I shouldn't. I didn't speak either. They asked me afterward why I didn't stand, why I didn't explain. I told them the same thing you did with your eyes. Because I didn't need to. I was 15. That day they dragged me off the bench. My shoes flew off. My knees bled. My voice cracked. But I didn't scream. I never told my daughters that story. Not until I saw you. You made something in me stop hiding. I wrote this because I want you to know you didn't just sit for yourself. You sat for the girl I buried in my memory. Thank you for unburying her. With all my breath, S.E.L. Jackson. Maya sat still for a long time. The wind turned the page slightly, as if even the air wanted to read. She folded the letter gently and held it against her chest. There were 1,000 comments online she hadn't read, a dozen emails she hadn't replied to, 3 pending invites from national advocacy groups. But none of them mattered now. Because somewhere, in a town without a train or a podium or a headline, an old woman had finally told the truth to herself, because of her. And that was enough. The stage wasn't hers, but her name was on the banner. The seat speaks a student-led conversation on race, silence, and power. Underneath, in bold keynote presence, Maya Coleman. Maya stood in the back of the auditorium, hoodie up, cap low, deliberately plain. She watched students file in with flyers in their hands and conviction in their eyes. Some wore shirts that read, Stillness is a stance. Others wore black in quiet coordination. A few had recreated the image from the train, her face, her notebook, her silence stylized like a protest poster. And for the first time, it made her flinch. Not because they were wrong, but because she wasn't sure who they were honoring anymore, her, or the version of her they needed. On stage, a speaker from another campus spoke passionately. Maya didn't just sit. She stood for every woman who's been told to make herself smaller. She gave us language in her silence. Applause erupted. Maya blinked. She had never wanted to give anyone language. She had just wanted to get to school. Next, someone read a poem inspired by her. You sat like thunder held in a girl's lungs, and we heard it every beat of your refusal. The crowd rose, a standing ovation. Maya didn't move. Her palms were sweating. In the wings, a student organizer spotted her and waved. Maya, we saved you a seat on stage. She shook her head, mouthing not yet. She moved instead to the far side of the hall where no cameras were pointed, where the lights didn't reach. She sat, back row, just like the benches where her mother once whispered warnings, just like the pews where the choir couldn't see you. And from that seat, she watched herself become a story. A girl next to her, unaware, leaned over and said, They say she didn't even cry. Can you believe that? Maya turned her face away. She had cried, just not where they could see, not where the narrative could clip it and call it weakness. At that moment, she didn't feel powerful. She felt rehearsed. But she let them keep clapping, let them keep lifting her like a statue made of stillness. Because she knew sometimes people don't need a person. They need a mirror, even if the mirror fogs from time to time. The room was small, carpeted, no windows. The kind of space that felt less like a meeting room and more like a confessional. 5 students sat around the circle, all black, all quiet, all waiting. Maya stepped in, unsure if this was a strategy session or an intervention. A tall girl named Brea, political science major, known for her piercing logic and untouchable twist-out, nodded to the chair across from her. "Sit, sis. We wanted to talk. No press, no faculty, just us." Maya sat. No welcome speech, no small talk. Brea started, "Do you know what's happening out there?" Maya nodded. "Yes." "No," Brea said flatly. "You know what they're saying. We're asking what you believe." Another voice chimed in, Malik, quiet but sharp, the type who took notes even during student protests. "Everyone's quoting you now, but we're not sure if you're still writing your own words." Maya looked around the room. These weren't fans. They were mirrors she couldn't walk past. "You think I didn't ask myself that?" she replied. A pause. She wasn't being defensive, just real. "It started with me just sitting. And suddenly people turned it into a movement, a message, a mythology." Brea crossed her arms. "And now, do you feel responsible for what it's become?" Maya thought. She remembered the girl on the lawn who whispered, "I want to be like you." She remembered the t-shirts, the hashtags, the old woman's letter. "I feel responsible to the truth," she said, "but not to the version of me they made up." Malik leaned in. "We're not asking you to lead. We're asking if you still feel what we feel. Not the interviews, not the camera, the fear, the anger, the tightness in your chest when someone says calm down but you haven't even spoken yet." Maya's voice softened. "Every day." And that broke the silence. Not dramatically, not in tears, just in breath, a shared exhale of recognition. Brea nodded, a long, slow nod. "Then you're still with us." She passed Maya a folded piece of paper. On it, an invite to a campus-wide planning session, not public, not performative. Maya accepted it, not like someone joining a movement, but like someone returning home. "You don't have to be their symbol," Brea added, "but you can be our sister." Maya looked at her hands, no podium, no spotlight, and whispered, "That's all I ever wanted." The room was dim, but alive. They met in the basement of the old social sciences building, the one with the creaky pipes and flickering lights. No banners, no media kits, just chairs in a circle and laptops with half-dead batteries. Maya sat cross-legged, a legal pad on her lap. Around her Brea, Malik, 2 pre-med twins named Keon and Caleb, and an architecture student named Saul who never spoke unless it mattered. For the first 10 minutes, they just listened to what students had endured that week, a professor who used her name as a case study without asking, a staff member who told a black student, "Don't start another Maya moment," an email from administration that asked students to remain civil during tense times. Then Maya spoke. "What if we don't fight them?" Heads turned, eyebrows lifted. "What do you mean?" Brea asked. Maya tapped her pen against the pad, slowly. "What if we document them instead? Not with anger, not with hashtags, but with history." She flipped the pad around. On it were 3 words. "The Archive Project." "We collect every story," Maya said, anonymous or not. Microaggressions, policies, class incidents, hallway comments. We build a searchable, cited, student-led archive of what it means to move through this university in black skin. Silence, the kind that comes not from doubt but from the weight of understanding. Malik leaned back. "So, instead of fighting fire with fire?" "We fight fire with receipts," Maya said. Caleb grinned, with footnotes. Brea nodded slowly. That would make them uncomfortable. Good, Maya replied. They made us disappear in meetings, in curriculums, in policies. Let's make them visible. On paper. In digital stone. Sol, quiet until now, spoke. We don't just make noise, we make record. And that changed the air in the room. Because protest fades, but record remains. By the end of the meeting, they had a shared drive, a submission form, and a promise. No editing, no filtering, no begging for validation. Just stories, just truth. The archive project was born that night not with applause, but with agreement. And Maya didn't lead it from the front. She stayed in the circle. She typed. She listened. Because maybe real power isn't about being the face. Maybe it's about being the page everyone else gets to write on. The Green South line hissed into the station. Same screech, same rhythm. 7:43 a.m. Right on time. Maya stepped in. Same third door, same second car, same left row by the window. The seat was empty. She paused for a breath, not hesitation. Not fear, just a breath that remembered too much. Then she sat. Back straight, hands calm, notebook on lap. Across from her a woman in blue scrubs, earbuds in. Beside her a teenage boy asleep with his head against the glass. Further down a white man in a suit, reading from a tablet. No one stared. But she felt it, not threat, not discomfort. Recognition. Not because they knew her name, but because now they knew what not to assume. 2 stops in, an older white woman boarded. Not the same one, but similar. Pearl earrings, neat scarf, the kind who usually scans seats like territories. She looked at Maya, looked at the sign above, please offer this seat to the elderly or disabled, and moved on. No words, no purse dropped, no throat cleared. Maya didn't flinch, but her chest softened, just slightly. Across the aisle, a college-age black boy in a varsity jacket made eye contact with her. Just a flicker. Then he nodded. Not wide, not performative. A silent, I see you. And she nodded back. The train rocked forward. Maya pulled out her notebook, not the old one, a new one. First page. Blank. Waiting. She wrote, change doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers back to you in the quiet places you once feared. She looked around. No one was filming. No one was arguing. No one was narrating her. And still she felt seen. Not as a symbol, not as a headline, just as a person. The train slid into University Central Station. Doors opened. This time, no one followed her with a phone. No one asked her for comment. No one told her to move. And still, something in the air had moved around her, not against her. She stepped off. The platform buzzed with its usual noise, vending machine hums, footsteps on tile, echoes of announcement speakers. But within that chaos, Maya carried something still. Not justice, not revenge, not even victory. Just space. Space that was once denied, now quietly hers. The door to room 204 was slightly ajar. Maya hadn't planned to stop. She was on her way to the library, notebook in hand, when she heard the tension, not shouting, not chaos, just a tightness in the voices inside, like people trying to rearrange the furniture of language in a burning house. She paused. Inside, a half circle of chairs, faculty, student reps, admin suits, all gathered around a long conference table too polished to feel honest. On the whiteboard, written in bold, Campus Dialogue Policy Revision Draft. One student, a quiet sophomore Maya recognized from the lawn, was standing. We're not asking for special treatment, he said. We're asking you to stop labeling our presence as disruption. A professor, glasses down his nose, tenure in his voice, responded. No one is labeling anyone, but tone does matter. We must preserve mutual respect. The words sat heavy. Maya leaned slightly closer. The student nodded, then asked, Can you define respect? The room stalled. The professor blinked. Someone else shuffled papers. Another cleared her throat. Respect is a sense of civility, politeness, professionalism. Even in silence. That question hit like a pebble in a glass pond. Another voice, this one from the dean, chimed in. The issue isn't silence itself, but the perception of it. And then came a whisper from a student near the window. But why is black silence always seen as aggression? Silence again, but this time, an honest one. Then someone noticed her. Maya, standing outside, watching, not entering, not speaking. But her presence changed the temperature in the room. No phone in her hand, no note to pass, just witness. The dean met her eyes. So did the professor. So did the student. And for a moment no one said her name. No one asked her in. No one needed to. Because she had already been there. In every sentence. In every reworded paragraph of that policy draft. The student at the front turned back to the board. Let's write that. Let's say what we mean. Silence is not consent. Presence is not threat. Respect isn't what makes you comfortable, it's what keeps us visible. Maya nodded, softly. She didn't need to enter the room. She had already been part of the rewrite. The kitchen was warm, not from the stove, from the light. Evening fell soft through the lace curtains. The gospel radio was off this time. No background chorus, just the soft clink of spoon against ceramic. Maya sat at the table, so did her mother. They were eating lentil stew. Same recipe her father used to make on Sundays. Same bowl chipped at the rim. Neither spoke. But it wasn't the silence from before the one stiff with warning. This one breathed. After a few bites, her mother asked, "You tired?" Maya smiled, barely. Not the kind sleep can fix. Her mother nodded. She understood that kind of tired, the one you inherit. The one that's written into your walk, your laugh, your patience. I watched that broadcast. Maya didn't flinch. Her mother stirred her stew. You didn't raise your voice, didn't cry, didn't throw nobody under the bus. She looked at Maya, slowly. But baby, you took the whole train with you. They both laughed, quiet, but real. Then came the question Maya hadn't expected. Are you proud of yourself? She thought about that. She thought about the woman on the train, the girl who said, I want to be like you. Julian Carter's file, the archive project, the back row of the auditorium, Mrs. Essie's letter. Then she looked at her mother and saw not just the woman who raised her, but the woman who once sat on a bench and got up for a world that never said thank you. Maya placed her spoon down. I'm proud I didn't disappear. Her mother reached across the table and touched her hand. Not tightly, not symbolically, just enough. Me too. No fanfare, no moral of the story, just lentils, warmth, breath between them. The window creaked open with the night breeze. Somewhere down the block, a train rumbled faint in the distance. Neither of them moved. They just sat, two black women, two stories woven by silence. And in that ordinary moment, in chipped bowls and second servings, they found what the cameras never could. Peace that didn't need to be performed. Power that didn't need to be declared. Just a seat finally kept without having to defend it. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher, one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.